Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mike the Beast Benson's channel. I'm Mike the Beast, and I don't know why I keep thinking of daunting task for these videos that I do, but I'm that crazy, and at least I'm not alone doing this. So before we get into the topic that a lot of you probably already know what it is, I'm joined by my good friend Chris. Chris, thanks for joining me tonight. How's it going?
Yeah, we're doing good, man. And glad to be back to do another music themed video. Like you said, this was a little bit of a daunting task because we really had to think about this list in particular because we've already kind of talked about it when we were off camera. That I had to think of bands that not just only I think are uh, great to me, but also inspired me and also, uh, you know, gave me the inspiration to be a musician, and also inspired me to be a singer songwriter, and not just enjoy but learn from. So this was a uh, really interesting assignment to do. So I'm really glad to be a part of this with you.
Yeah, that's a great segue into kind of what went into my decision making process for our top 10 favorite bands of all time. Like you said, bands that um, inspire me. If for those who don't know, Chris and I are both musicians, both been in bands together, and both been listening and playing music for well over 20 years, if not longer. So it's been quite the journey since I've really gotten into my music. Through dad, through friends, and playing in bands. So a lot of my factors, and it wasn't like a generic point system in my head that I used. I kind of just gathered different factors, different aspects. Like you said, bands that inspire you as a musician, bands that I always go to. If I'm driving, it's been a long day, or if I need to relax, I hey Siri, play, and that band will come on. And as I turn my Siri off, so those types of bands, bands I've seen, it might be a little unfair, but bands that I've been fortunate to see live, and seeing them at their live in person, and each band, the members of the band, and how iconic they are, and all their contributions to rock and roll. So before we get into the vid, a couple people, a shout out in the chat. John Big Daddy Ross. John, as always, thanks so much for tuning in. Dad, how's it going? Pardon me. And then we have our good friend Mickey's Magic. Thanks for tuning in.
I haven't seen you in a hot sec. I am from a little town, actually. A town of, yes, I am from Watertown, Connecticut. It is a tiny little town. Well, it's actually a lot bigger than you expect because it's mostly farmland. But it's you get to the general public, the main strip is very small. Everything you need is on one street. But now most of that street's becoming a parking lot. Hooray!
That's a whole nother
anymore.
That's a whole nother topic for another video. Chris,
Chris,
another musician that both Chris V and I know and played with and recorded with, and thank you guys for tuning in. And throughout the video, please let us know your thoughts. Feel free to put your list in as we go along, number by number. And that being said, we've got some people coming in still, which is awesome. If I do that, look at that. And without any further ado, let's get this show on the road. And number 10.
See, the Beach Boys. Oh, I knew that too. That is so. So Benson and I were talking before we started the video. I was guessing because I didn't see his list. Who he would have. Because he knows all the people I put on mine. And God, I knew deep down, I knew the Beach Boys too would have at least been up higher. I'm a little shocked it's 10, but I knew the Beach Boys was a choice for you.
Without sounding like a broken record, I'll try not to say this with every pick, but this is such a crazy thing to do. Not only find 10 of your bands of your all-time favorite and then have to rank those 10, and it's just, this is tough, and this is a prime example of it at number 10. And there's really no, I don't even think like in past videos, albums, movies, you really don't need to go into negatives or cons on this list. So the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, one of the, a true genius in the music industry, and the talent of just constructing the albums. The most famous Pet Sounds, one of the best, piano players as well. The Beach Boys, I'm a sucker for harmonies, so that kind of was another factor into my list. What bands have the best harmonies? These guys, if they're not in the top three, it's hard to think of, more than three other guys who are better than them at harmonies. You got Al Jardine, you have Dennis Wilson, Mike Love, and just I could go on and on about the Beach Boys. I figured, just naming three of my favorite songs. Sloop John B. Love that song. Always love that song. Help Me Rhonda and Darling. Just great songs. And, isn't a huge factor in it because it's solo, but, Brian Wilson, what he was able to do after the Beach Boys songs, like Love and Mercy. And I've been fortunate to see Brian Wilson live twice. Phenomenal to see one of, my icons live in person. And, there's the Beach Boys that tour now, which is not even all the originals because they've had a little tragic history. But I will give the Beach Boys the credit of Kokomo, not Brian Wilson, but still a fun, catchy song going back to Cocktail. So love that song. Love the Beach Boys. Had to put them on the list. Does ache me. I hear my dad and Eddie screaming in unison, singing them at number 10. But I had to put, Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys on this list. And how about yours?
Well, I was going to say, my grandpa was watching this video right now. He'd also be like, "Why aren't they number one? They're the best. They're the best band of all time." Because he's such a huge Beach Boys fan. But yeah, I went with Amy Winehouse. This was for me. It was a real obvious choice, just because I love her voice, and I love just the fusion style she has going between the soul, the jazz, the funk, the R&B. She has a lot of that, rhythm that I enjoy. But it was her voice that really got me, that really, captivated me. And I listen to her quite often. She is definitely one of the artists I would be like, okay, if I'm really feeling something, like I would put her on. And like I got introduced to her, like probably most people from her Back in Black album. Because with Rehab being the number one hit song for a very long time, it was kind of hard not to miss her. But I out of all of her albums, the one I enjoy the most is Lioness Hidden Treasures, which has a couple covers on there that she did, and just putting her take on some songs like Valerie, which we all know that she did a cover of. It's just mind blowing. To name some of my favorite songs by her, I would say the Valerie, the 1968 version that she does is great. And then I love Tears Dry on their own. And I really, really love, God, I'm torn. Because it's either Back in Black or I'm going to botch the name on this one. Because on Our Day Will Come. Great song off of the Lioness album, which is the opening track. So, yeah, I had Amy Winehouse.
Now, I forgot to mention with the Beach Boys, if you're a movie person like we both are, Love and Mercy that came out, I don't have the year with me, but Paul Dano as Brian Wilson, and you had Paul Giamatti as their crooked, his doctor. Just anywho, it was a phenomenal movie. So if you're a fan of biopics, want to learn more about the Beach Boys, that movie was phenomenal. But speaking of that, Chris, did you by any chance catch the Amy Winehouse movie that came out last year?
I didn't, because I have a really tough time with the biopics, especially after with Bohemian Rhapsody making it such like a must make thing now in cinema. Like we have to have all of these like glorified drama movies of bands, and my problem with this is they would always cut like a lot of the more nit grittier stuff that happened in their careers, and just showing more of like the good things that happened on more than like everything else. But I didn't see Amy Winehouse's for a big reason, because I find her story so sad that I physically cannot watch that. I could just picture the image of her downfall. I cannot put it up to me for my heart to go through that, because she was such a talent, and the industry just killed her, on top of everything else she was going through. Like I couldn't bear myself to go see that.
Yeah.
I was so happy I passed that this year. It was so funny. So I have my mentor and good friend Brian Kelly on my 27th birthday. He texts me saying, "Happy birthday! Get through this year." And I'm like, "Why are you saying that?" And he reminded me, like, the 27 Club. I'm like, "Oh, that's right. I'm a musician. Let's get through 27."
I thought the same thing when I turned 27. We both made it out alive.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, that being said, Chris, why don't you start us off with your number 9?
Wow. I'm sorry, Benson. I'm really number 9.
That's how low this
Wow.
this was not an easy list. I know Phil's probably like 9, but it's tough.
Oh my God, that kills me, Benson. I was so wrong. But Led Zeppelin, they were the band throughout all of high school. Probably learned a few Led Zeppelin licks throughout the years. Actually, Chris, if he's still on and watching, he actually for a quick guitar lesson made me learn a Zeppelin lick or two, just to get my hand back into shape. But dude, it's freaking John Bonham, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, the other guy, I can't remember his name. Yep, thank you. Like the Gateway Band for a reason, right? The Gateway Jam Band for a reason. These guys rock, these guys roll. Jimmy Page, besides Slash from Guns N' Roses, was probably the first like guitar player that got me into being like, I want to play guitar. I want to play guitar. I want to do what that guy's doing. And there was an inkling in a couple videos back that we were trying to do a Led Zeppelin listing, and that brought back so many memories when we were going through all the discography, especially like just listening through their evolution from just Zeppelin 1 to Coda was it's so cool seeing you just like, all right, we got this jammy rock and roll thing to like, oh, this is kind of getting into more psychedelic. We're getting more into these more like very wordy, very elongated songs, more storytelling-esque than anything. And I took a lot of inspiration for that for myself, because I love like writing narratives for songs. I like making a story out of it more than just writing the song, just writing a random love song, or writing a song that's just straightforward and to a point. Yeah, Zeppelin. They are very low on the list, but they are very high in my heart.
Yeah, Zeppelin's a band. We're not going to do an honorable mentions. We might, but like not going to put a whole slide to it because our honorable mentions could be just as long, if not longer, as this actual video. Crazy. I know Zeppelin's didn't make my top 10. That's how bonkers this is. But Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, like you said, one, not only one of the greatest like rock and roll bands of all time, but one of the godfathers of metal, you can argue. Them and Sabbath really paved the way for a lot of, the late 70s and 80s and hair bands. So Zeppelin's, you didn't even mention, that many songs, but like, close your eyes, put your finger on 3 songs, and yeah, okay, I'll take those. For me, yeah, The Clash, I'm a huge punk rock fan, especially more of the earlier stuff. And Joe Strummer, Mick Jones. You have one of the most iconic albums of all time, London Calling, which has most of my favorite Clash songs are off that. But then what did they do after that? And correct me if I'm wrong, chat, or Chris, they followed up with Sandinista. That's, I think, a triple album. And it's another just classic Clash rock songs on that album. So what they were able to do before they ended up parting ways, Mick Jones ended up forming a band, Big Audio Dynamite, which is a pretty fun band, and Joe Strummer went to do Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros. But they were the perfect combination of just like punk, but not too fast. Some of the later punk bands that really go into the anti-establishment and fast and more kind of just talking, speaking, not singing. Clash was before that, obviously inspired a ton of bands. You have songs like Go Straight to Hell, which is kind of like a reggae song, or Go Straight to Hell Boys. You also have songs like Career Opportunities, White Riot. And then you have Should I Stay or Should I Go? You have Rock the Casbah, Train in Vain, The Clampdown. I'm going more than 3 songs, but Lost in a Supermarket. It's just a lot of their songs don't get the radio play. But if it wasn't for me getting their greatest hits as a kid, and then when I got my own record player, listening to London Calling and Sandinista, and hearing some of those songs that didn't even make the greatest hits CD, let alone get radio time now on classic rock stations. So tragic. Joey Strummer passed away. I forgot what, the early 2000s. But they're one of those bands, if you could go back in time, a band that's longer around, they're definitely high on my list.
That's the one thing I also love about Zeppelin was like I would rather listen to a lot of their B-side cuts than a lot of like the ones that were on their radio play. Battle of Evermore, solid song for me. I really love I guess that one is a little more of a radio hit song. Dire Maker, because it's that was kind of like
that's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, getting into kind of more of like a reggae, like beachy vibe, right? But I'm just still so but that was it's like a 2. I think it was like a 2-parter album for because it had over like 20 something songs, 20 or I'm blanking on the album that you just mentioned.
My dad corrected me. It was a 3.
It was 3.
Yeah.
So there were so many songs, man.
Yeah. And especially coming after London Calling, and they just, they outdid themselves. Guy, my friend, thanks so much for joining. I always appreciate you in the chat. And then, another point I forgot to bring up, Straight to Hell. A lot of people nowadays, they hear the I fly like paper, get high like planes. Oh, what a cool original song. The Clash, they got sued for that, MIA. So a lot of people don't realize that's pretty much the whole melody of that song is ripped right from the Clash. So it's cool knowing and Straight to Hell is such a better song too. Yeah. And it's chill. Like I talk about songs when you just want to relax and get a cool vibe going. Such a cool, I love that song. That's probably my favorite deep cut when you ask. Alrighty, let's go on to number 8, Chris.
Cool. I think it's your time to talk first.
It is,
buddy.
my bad. So yeah, once again, I know Pink Floyd, number 8, crazy.
Honestly, I think it's respectable for your, because I know other bands you might have coming along your way. I think that's a respectable spot for you because they to me you put Pink Floyd to me that was like you could put them anywhere band.
Yeah, as a kid growing up, listening to the classic rock radio, Money was played a ton, Another Brick in the Wall, and it's just like before knowing these are part of 2 massive concept albums. I love those songs as a kid. Then when I get older, I get my first CD of Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall, and
Yep.
the brilliance of David Gilmour and Roger Waters. Roger Waters, very underrated bass player, very unique style to his singing. David Gilmour, I'll say it, underrated guitarist. Just the talent alone with those 2 guys, and Pink Floyd, they've had a crazy career. Before David Gilmour, it was Syd Barrett, and their first couple albums were very late 60s, early 70s, trippy, psychedelic, like metals. That's I remember listening to that for the first time, and I'm like, this is nothing like Dark Side of the Moon. But you see the creative talent that Waters had, and then when Gilmour joins the band, you get Dark Side of the Moon. I always loved Us and Them, another chill, relaxed song off that one. Time, phenomenal. I always loved the intro with the clock ticking and then the rhythmic beats, and then you just have Gilmour's lyrics, jump in. The Wall. I'm gonna say for one of my 3 songs, even though I've already said like 20. Mother, I always loved Mother, Off the Wall. And then very underrated album, Animals.
Oh my god, I'm so glad you brought that one up because that's probably one of my favorite Pink Floyd records. Oh my god, that was actually probably one of the ones I was first introduced to. Pink Floyd.
If you ever see a pig, inflatable pig at a concert, that's thanks to Pink Floyd. And then very underrated album. It's without Roger Waters because him and David Gilmour had a split, and then David Gilmour carried on the band for a while. It's one of my all-time favorite songs, Floyd, on the Turning Away. Such an awesome song. That song's very relatable today. And his guitar solos are just stop what you're doing and listen to it. And once again, just with the lyrics, really gets you. And once again, if you've never heard On the Turning Away, I think a lot of people should listen to that song nowadays. And I've been fortunate not to see David Gilmour, but I've seen Roger Waters I saw him live. His first set was his solo career and non-Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. And then the whole second act was Dark Side from start to finish. And one of my top 3 favorite concerts I've ever, seen. Very fortunate, very blessed. I was able to see that with my dad and my sister. And Pink Floyd, number 8 for me.
Wow. I remember being introduced to Pink Floyd by my buddy Josh in high school. His dad was a huge Pink Floyd fan. And it was such an interesting way of getting introduced. It was because when me and my buddy Josh were in a band together in high school, we were at his place. We were just writing some songs because we had a new bass player. We're trying to teach him how to play bass. Bass player wasn't really getting it because he was, a young kid, just like us. But like this kid clearly didn't want interest in any of this, but we were trying to force him to be in this band with us. I got so fed up with the kid. I'm like, Josh, you fucking deal with him. I'm gonna just walk away. And I was just gonna walk into Josh's basement because he had, the couch down there and he had a couple guitars and his amps down there. And I see his dad just chilling down there, just drinking a glass of wine with a pack of cigarettes, and he's listening to Pink Floyd. And this is at 3:00 in the morning. And he's like, you ever listen to Pink Floyd? I'm like, never. And he's like, well, take a seat. We're going to put on Animals. And I'm like, all right. So, and that's what we did from like 3:00 in the morning until this was a weekend too. It wasn't a school night. It was like a Saturday. It was like 3:00 in the morning until 8, we were down there just talking, smoking cigarettes, and just listening to Pink Floyd. I always say for my top songs by them, I love From Wish You Were Here. I love Shine On You Crazy Diamonds.
Yeah.
I guess it's basically anything off of The Wall I thoroughly enjoy. I mean, like, I literally cried when Comfortably Numb's guitar solo went on. And I also really love the Pigs. That's pretty much the gist of all the Pink Floyd I really enjoy. And I just lost my screen. Hey, there you go.
Also, no one can confirm it other than my father and sister, but Roger Waters did wave to us at that concert too. So I've made eye contact with Roger Waters.
Yeah.
How about your number 8?
My number 8, it's fairly recent actually. And by I say fairly recent, I mean the last like 3-4 years. This is a band called I Fight Dragons. If no one knows about them, they were really big in the 2010s. What I love about them is that they are if you watched our last video on the Beast channel of the most listened or top bands of 2024 or albums of 2024, my first few were like all those, Ninja Sex Party and Sex Bomb or Star Bomb, whatever that band is called. I mentioned this band earlier on because these guys are that Nintendo core. So it's like rock and roll music, but they use a 16-bit video game synthesizers to add more, color and make them a little more unique. But man, they rock so hard. And talk about concept albums. They have 2 of them that are really solid. They have one called The Near Future, which is basically like, a love story within a dystopian, apocalyptic world. Basically like a love story within a video game. And I love, that's what really caught my ear by them. And I was actually introduced to them by my mentor, Brian Kelly, because he said, if you like All American Rejects, you'll like these guys. And I'm like, cool. But they just blew my mind. And it inspired me a little bit of like, I want to add a little bit of different things to my music, not just like straight songs that have like your basic, guitar, drums, bass, whatever, and your guitar licks, but like maybe add something else in there as well. Like maybe if it's a little piano or maybe it's a little synthesizer of some sorts to give it some undertone. These guys really gave me the inspiration to do that. Top songs by them. I really love, Heads Up, Hearts Down off their first EP. I also really enjoy Welcome to the Breakdown, which is off their second one. And then it's another cheat. Like any song through the Near Future album is just phenomenal from start to finish. Actually, I lied. Chicago off that album is top notch.
Awesome. And another thing I forgot to mention about Pink Floyd, Urban Legend, matches up Wizards of the Oz. I don't know if it's still up there. I've never done it, but there was a YouTube video that syncs them. And
I still think it's there.
You could Google it if you want the references, and I'm paraphrasing. It's like I'm all into it. They deny it. But it's like one of the lines is "Some do it falling," or you stumble or something, and Dorothy falls off the bridge or fence that she's walking. There's the Munchkins. I could be wrong. The Munchkins are dancing in sync with the bass line to "Money." I'm a believer of that. They can deny it all they want. If it's a happy accident, sure, cool. But if you've never taken the time to listen to it, either if you queue up your Blu-ray and your vinyl, or you find the YouTube video, or just read the references, pretty cool. Chris, how about your number 7?
Is that my number 7? And I keep losing my freaking monitor. What is going on? No signal. Shut up. Stay there.
Yes, it is your number 7.
Really? I put them at 7? I thought that was higher. Oh, I did. Okay. Oh, that's why I put it. That's why I did that. Sorry, I'm trying to get my monitor back on because it seems to not want to be. I can't see anything. I have a dark screen. Yeah, no, dude, you're there. Well, I'll talk about it while I try to fix the problem.
I can go into my number 7 if you need a couple minutes.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
So once again, this is such a tough list to to put together, but I had to include the Who on my list. If you want like the definition of a rock and roll band, um, it's the Who. You have one of the best frontmen of all time in Roger Daltrey. You have one of the greatest guitar players of all time, um, Pete Townsend, both also great singers. You have the original lineup, Keith Moon the Loon, one of the greatest drummers of all time, and one of the very most underrated bassists of all time, John Entwistle. Just a phenomenal band. You have Who's Next, and you have Tommy. Who's Next, just an awesome rock album. And then you bring in Tommy, which is like their version of a concept album. Obviously he's been brought to life on the stage and in movies, and just a great story told by Pete Townsend. And then more recently, I say recently, this is probably like in the 2010s, they came out with, and after they had their split, they came back. One of their first big get-togethers was that concert for 9/11. They reunited, and then I'm blanking on their that album I was just about to talk about. Is it The Endless Wire? But that's one of my favorite songs from that album, The Endless Wire, which is an awesome acoustic song, and Pete Townsend's vocals are great on that as well. But yeah, Won't Get Fooled Again, My Generation, Magic Bus.
Who are you?
Who are you? It's we can go on and on. The Who's one of if you want rock and roll band in the dictionary, they're one of the top maybe 3 bands that picture should be there.
Yeah, for sure. My buddy Donnie loves them a lot. He for a while would be like, he's like, they're way better than the Beatles ever were, and we would have conversations about that often, especially when he started working with me at the campground. Yeah, I my number 7 finally, after I fixed my stupid computer monitor, which tells me I need to get a new computer monitor.
Bob O'Reilly. Sorry, I can't. How did I not?
Bob O'Reilly, dude. I mean, that was a summertime jam for 2 summers. For 2
that's ever like I'll get the tears if that's ever featured in a movie or that's a commercial or something. Yeah.
I always got pumped when the Odd Bodies would play at shows, because they come out with like the track, the looper.
Yeah.
Or to just do the da da da. But yeah, so my number 7, I went the Front Bottoms. These guys are literally doing what I wanted to do in my sound. It's all their songs are written around Brian, the front man, his acoustic guitar, and all the songs are just based off of that. And they're probably the biggest Midwestern emo band out there right now. They're just originally 2 guys, Brian, who's the lead guitarist, and Maddie, who's on the drums. 2 guys from Jersey. Their whole gimmick was originally, hey, we write songs. They're not the best songs in the world. We're not the most talented guys ever, but we write songs and we just want to play. And they got big because they would just literally play anywhere. They play any gig. They just book anything. Like, they would literally play at random people's parties. Like, I had a couple of friends that saw them a few times in Connecticut, just at random basement parties when they were first getting big. And this was like around 2012, 2013. But their songs are upbeat. Yes, their lyrics don't make any sense because that's just the gimmick of that genre. But like they rock. I'm listen to Twin Size Mattress. That's like the best gateway song to get into the Front Bottoms because that's their most popular song with over like 50 million streams on Spotify right now. But like Twin Size Mattress is phenomenal. I would say anything off of their album Sickness and Flames, specifically like Montgomery Forever, is a classic style Front Bottom song. Or West Virginia from their album Back on Top is also very, very good. But yeah, these guys are what I wanted to get out of my sound. Acoustic guitar, electric guitars on the sides, big band doing everything else around it. This is what I idolize to be at the end of the day. Except I hope I have decent enough lyrics that makes sense. Though if I knew that was the way to go, I would go that route.
And Phil had some comments about the Front Bottoms.
It is. It's
And
yes, it is. Yes. Oh my, yeah. Thank you. But you know what though? They're just great, and all they especially like they got too good now. You know, they after they got big and they started making more money, and they started getting bigger tours. 'Cause now they're touring it. They're touring in Europe. They're starting to do that now. Like their music started to get better production, and their sound. They're not just like these garage bands anymore. That garage band sound anymore. They're just their songs are more laid out, better structured, and they're finally finding like the groove that they wanted to find for years. And a lot of people hated that. But I'm like, you know what? I love watching an evolution of a band, and these guys are definitely evolving through every album.
cool. And Chris, why don't you just go into your number 6? I knew this was going to be. I knew he'd be on your list.
Yeah, this was tough though because I was going to put him higher, but like you said, with lists, in past videos, lists are hard. They are very hard. And Tom Petty, I knew you would put Tom Petty on there too. But yeah, James Taylor, he is a familiar favorite of mine. Not only because of his sound, but also there is nostalgia with it. He was my first big artist I saw. With every 4th of July, when we became friends with our family friends, the Angels, we would go to Tanglewood every 4th of July because he always plays there. And when I was a little younger, like I didn't appreciate it at the time. But like we see every time we kept seeing him, it just brings back all the fun times of us just bringing coolers, finding our same spot on the same lawn in Tanglewood underneath the big oak tree. We circle out our spot and we just we eat, we drink, and we listen to James Taylor for the evening. And with all that, like I couldn't not. His guitar playing, especially his finger picking, yeah, his shows are phenomenal. And I saw him one year on his 65th birthday, and that was a wild show. Not only because he had Carole King come on stage and they did some songs together, but through video, Paul McCartney made an appearance.
No way.
Yeah, just to say happy birthday. Because don't forget, he got his start through the Beatles. Because he was the second artist to be put on. Well, actually, the first artist, I guess, to be put first. I would say second because the Beatles were there the entire time on Abbey Road Records. So he got his start from the Beatles.
From Liverpool. From Liverpool.
Oh, from Liverpool. Yeah. Number 9. But yeah, and also John Travolta showed up too.
No way.
Yeah, he was there. John Travolta showed up. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the voice actor's name, but Homer Simpson came in and did a video for. Yes, like literally, they animated a video for James with Homer Simpson saying "Happy 65th birthday." It was a huge thing. But yeah, like his finger style playing is what really is what always is got me, especially with his songs like Fire and Rain and like Carolina. That's like, okay, acoustic guitar. This is what I want. This is what I want to play. Like I play the electrics; those are fun. I've learned guitar on acoustic, but never really picked it back up. But like when I got older, and actually when my band See Me For Me broke up, James Taylor was actually the first band I really listened. It was the first artist I really listened to after that, because he's one that gets me out of my funks. I could put on his Sweet Baby James record and put that on for hours. And that's what kind of got me. And my monitor just went dead again. What the hell just happened? I might just have to like switch to a laptop or some shit. But yeah, James Taylor is on my list.
Yeah, and he's someone I've never given the deep dive into his catalog, but someone I definitely have the utmost respect for, being an acoustic guy myself, singer songwriter myself. He's one of the best, and shout out to one of my old coworkers at the pack store I used to work at. Kevin Constantine was also a huge James Taylor fan. He would always go up to that Tanglewood show as well, see him. So he's definitely someone that definitely does. I knew was going to be on your list, and he is an all-time great singer songwriter, and envious of some of the songs that his songwriting prowess. For my number 6, yeah, I had to include Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It's another guy that you always heard on classic rock radio, but one of the bands that they always played a handful of songs growing up. So I was introduced to him at a very young age. The first song I ever learned to play and sing at the same time was Tom Petty's "Learn to Fly." One of my all-time favorite songs, and that's one reason why I wanted to put that on my album that came out a couple years ago. And you have Mike Campbell, phenomenal guitarist, as well. Tom Petty, another great singer-songwriter. I've seen him at least 5 times. That was one of those deaths that took you back, brought a tear to my eye. Tom's a legend, and and he, knowing that Tom Petty's not going to be making music, touring anymore, that's, that was very sad to hear. But his legacy, legend, will always live on. I Won't Back Down, such a great song. You also have, the song "Into the Great Wide Open" off the album, phenomenal album from them. Damn Torpedoes, another great album. Some deep cuts, Keep Me Alive. Just search that song. It's a fun acoustic song by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Tom's also done some solo albums. A Highway Companion, very underrated album. He's got Saving Grace is off that one, which is a great song. You have Turn This Car Around off that. One of my, another all-time favorite acoustic song is off that album, Square One, which is a beautiful song written by him. You have Bet Matesh, who's very underrated on the piano and keys. geez, he's worked with Stevie Nicks. Stop Driving My Car Around. There's a funny story where he was supposed to write that, and I could be getting songs mixed up, but he was writing that song for Stevie, but was like, Stevie, I kind of like this song. I'm gonna put it on my album. Breakdown, Refugee. You mentioned, Dan Castanella from The Simpsons being, part of the James Taylor thing. One of the best, my favorite Simpsons episodes of all time is how I spent my summer vacation or strummer vacation. Homer goes to rock and roll fantasy camp, and Tom Petty's one of the voice, guest stars. So that's a great episode of Tom Petty voicing on that episode. But yeah, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Very good Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl used to do classic rock bands for the halftime shows. The Tom Petty was one of my favorites. And yeah, when it comes to me as a performer and a songwriter, definitely a lot of inspiration from him. And after that, how did I forget Wildflowers? Talk about solo Tom Petty. The song Wildflowers is an amazing song. You Don't Know How It Feels is also off of that. Yeah, I could go on and on about Tom Petty. But yeah, so that's why I had to have him on my list. Chris, okay if I go to my number 5?
Yeah, I could hop in. I think I remember my number 5. It's just hard when I can't see anything.
You almost all set, ready to go?
No, because I have no monitor. my monitor's dead.
So I will switch to number 5, a band that Chris and I are both huge fans of, Green Day. Growing up as a 90s kid, how do you not know Time of Your Life?
Your number 5 is Green Day?
That's, once again, this is not an easy list to make. Green Day's my number 5. You have,
how do I fix this?
You have Dookie, you have Nimrod, you have those songs coming out in the 90s, albums coming out in the 90s. You have, and then in the 2000s, how do they reinvigorate themselves? You come out with American Idiot, which just turned. You had last year for 2024. You had the 30th anniversary of Dookie, and you had the 20th anniversary of American Idiot, which is just bonkers. But yeah, you got Billy Joe Armstrong, Mike Dirnt, and Trey Cool. Obviously throughout the years as they've gotten bigger, they have a couple other guys who, are with their touring band. You have Jason White, Jason Freeze, amongst other guys. But I mentioned how, when I was talking about the Clash, I'm a huge punk fan. And I usually tend to more of the earlier punk bands from the 70s. But Green Day has been one of those bands that, granted, they've kind of reinvented themselves, since, they came out in the 90s. So, is American Idiot and 21st Century Breakdown full straight on 100% punk albums? No, but it just showed how they were able to change themselves and put out great albums with a lot of great songs on them. Another band that I was able to see live 3 times, and they always put on, once with you, Chris, they always put on a phenomenal show. And with songwriting, these guys, Billy Joe was a very good songwriter. Sure, they have a lot of songs that are goofy and stuff, but When I Come Around is probably my favorite all-time song. Always loved Minority from Green Day. Warning is one of the songs I've covered a bunch of times. We covered JAR together. Going the Pasquela off their first album, Smooth and Sloppy Hours. And they had the time where Billy was in rehab. They kind of, that was the same time they came out with Uno, Dos, and Trey. They put out 3 albums in 1 year, which is a lot to take in. There is some good through those 3 albums. We don't talk about them that much. But then recently, they've been able to put out a couple albums since, and Sabers was my favorite album from 2024. So Green Day's huge influence on me as a performer. Try to as much as I can take from Billy Joe Armstrong, and yeah, Green Day is my number 5. We might be talking about them a little bit later. Chris, you're able to talk about your number 5?
Yes, I am able to talk about my number 5. Can you still hear me, by the way?
I can.
Okay, great. Just making sure. Mumford and Sons. Oh my God, they are my gateway into like that folk indie scene. Putting on because I got introduced to them by Babel, and also my friend Karina. She's a huge Mumford and Sons fan. But listening to I Will Wait, which is such a their most overplayed radio song. I was like, oh, I need to hear more of this, and that kind of emulated into my first album, Will You Be There. I took a lot of their guitar playing into that piece, and yeah, I mean they're great songwriters. They are great storytellers, and to do a lot without percussion is phenomenal. There's not a time I don't listen to Mumford and Sons. I'm actually really happy that they are coming back. They were on hiatus because a band member of theirs left, who was probably one of the most important ones, who's the banjo and guitar player. But they just announced that they're releasing a new album this year, so I'm really hoping I get to see them live very, very soon.
Awesome. I always loved Little Lineman. You said I Will Wait, probably the most overplayed radio song. Before that, Little Lineman, I remember was played a ton. Always loved that song. Always loved the
that whole album. To me, their first ones, their Sign No More album, to me will always be great. Like that's probably their best album. Because it had songs like Little Lion Man on it, and Roll Away Your Stones is also a great track. But like, I mean, there's also not a time I will never not use their song Sign No More for any Shakespeare show ever, because it's just, yeah, I know. I have no signal. Thank you so much. I guess I'm rolling without. It's gotta be this HDMI cable, or hopefully it is the cable and nothing else. Yeah, that's all I have.
Cool. So you can see the screen, right?
Yeah, I had to open up my other laptop. So I'm watching your live stream right now. The live stream right now, just so I can see what we're working with.
Gotcha. So you ready to start off number 4?
I can start off number 4. Sorry, there's just a little lag if you didn't hit click yet.
The band you kind of referenced or mentioned earlier.
Sorry, I'm still waiting for the YouTube to catch up.
This is killing me.
Oh my God, yes. Okay. See, I keep telling myself, like, as we're going through this list, like, what are the other big bands that Benson listens to? Dave Matthews Band, dude. Oh my God, how did I forget Dave Matthews Band? But yeah, All American Rejects. They were my the band that stuck with me through all those years. They're my first CD I ever bought was their Move Along record. Because Dirty Little Secrets was at the top charts when it came out. Same thing for their title track song, Move Along. My God, yeah. All American Rejects really got me into loving pop punk. Yeah, I wish I saw them. Uh, Meg, I really wish I did. Cause sorry, so now I'm on YouTube. I can actually like read the comments while we're like. So I always have the screen full when we do these live streams, so I don't really read the comments. Um, but yeah, Megan. Oh my God. I when they were in Hartford or not Hartford at the Bridgeport Amphitheater, I wish I was able to see them, but I didn't because I was working like a dum dum. Um, and it still hurts myself because I heard it was such a great show. Uh,
If I could interject quick on that topic, RIP Warp Tour, when that was still a thing, they were the headliner one year in Hartford, and uh, I forgot, my group of friends were like, do we go to them? Do we see one of these other bands we've never really heard of? They're on the main stage. We're like, we got to see All American Rejects, and I'm happy I did because they played the hits. They made it interact with the crowd, talked to the crowd after every song, and yeah, it was phenomenal. And I think it was MTV Classic used to have they would just play an hour of a band's music videos, and theirs was one of them, and that's how I first heard about them and or more of their songs. And like um, yeah, so they're one of the, I think, the best rock bands of like the 2000
yeah,
through today.
yeah. I mean, they were like the pinnacle of that era, right? Like there were so many other bands that came out around the same time as they did, but like they were so much in the limelight.
Oh, interesting. They were doing Warp Tour in the same way they were doing when you were. Oh, interesting.
Hmm.
Definitely something I'm going to be looking into.
I didn't even know Warped Tour was coming back.
So, like you kind of said before you went to AAR, Dave Matthews Band. I don't know where to start. I tried making notes, but gonna go off the cup here. As a just a band you may hear me talk about later, a couple spots later. That's a band that's, I don't want to say derivative because that sounds like a not a compliment, but Dave Matthews Band, since the 90s, they've been on such a journey. They've always been able to adapt. They started, they had a piano player, and piano player wasn't working out. So they bump him out for Tim Reynolds, who's maybe the most underrated guitarist of all time, phenomenal guitar player. They were known for having Boyd Tinsley, their fiddle violinist, the fiddleist violinist. Some stuff happened with him, so he leaves the band, and they bring Buddy into the band as their new keyboard pianos, and phenomenal without skipping a beat. Also, they're one of their saxophonists, Leroy, passed away, a tragic ATV accident. They bring in Jeff Coffin, the guy there with the bald guy with the beard there, and replacing a founding member is never easy, I can imagine. And he comes in, and it's like, once again, they didn't skip a beat. And Dave Matthews, one of my favorite songwriters, huge influence on me, also as a performer, frontman. You have arguably, probably my number, I gotta say number 2. You might find out who my number 1 drummer is, but Carter Beauford, always with a smile. This band's a band I've been fortunate to see multiple times. Probably the band I've seen the most live. Carter's has a smile, grinning from ear to ear the whole show. We just lost Chris. That's okay. We keep on rolling, just like Dave Matthews always does. Stefan Lestard, a very, very talented bass player. And once again, Tim Reynolds. I can't stress enough what happened when they introduced him to the band, and they never really had a lead guitarist. Dave was really their only guitar player. I'm sure they had like studio guys fill in, and before I saw them live, I'm sure they traveled with another guitarist. But bringing in Tim, and he had helped out with a couple of his other albums as well. But Tim Reynolds, I've been able to see him solo live personally, phenomenal. Under the Table of Dreaming, one of their first big albums. That's where you get songs like What Would You Say, Satellite, and then you have Crash, and then you with Crash Into Me. My favorite album for them is Big Whiskey and the Gruger's King, that came out in 2008. That was the album that while they were recording it, that's when Leroy Moore did pass away. That's when Tim was on the album in full. And my favorite Dave Matthews Band song, Why I Am, which is a tribute to Leroy. And you got the horns, you got the guitar. Tim just crushes it. Dave's vocals on it is phenomenal. And that song is just a great song. That album also has songs like Spaceman, which is a fun acoustic song. You have Shake Me Like a Monkey, Funny the Way It Is. And then I'm just going through some of my other favorite Dave Matthews Band songs. Grace Is Gone, Trippin' Billies, Gray Street. Recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Very long overdue. As we still wait for Chris to join us. And Dave Matthews, let's see, solo has also been able to put out a couple solo albums. Some Devil's a great song. I try to, the best I can. I haven't done a show in a while, but whenever, Number 41's a phenomenal song. Then trigger some more songs. You have Pig, you have Halloween, you have Two Step, Jimmy Thing. And I'll say this story since we got some time waiting for Chris to get back on. My dad and I, we never really cared for Dave Matthews Band. Liked a couple of their songs, you'd hear on the radio. Some we, skip and change to something else. One of my all-time favorite guitar players, Warren Haynes, his band Government Mule was actually opening up for Dave. So this was the first time that I saw Dave Matthews. I want to say 2006. I think that's about right. And so we see Government Mule. They put on a great opening, for the opener, put on a great set. And we're like, oh, you might as well stay, for Dave Matthews. And that's the moment where I became a Dave Matthews fan. Lights go out. These plasma screens are revealed, crystal clear. The crowd's going nuts, and the band comes out. And you don't appreciate Carter until you do see him. Howdy, Chris. You don't. I was just talking about how I really became a Dave Matthews Band fan. Government Mule, as you know, I'm a huge fan of. My dad and I went to see them open up for Dave 2006. Might as well stay for Dave Matthews. And that's when I became a Dave Matthews fan. Another kind of fun story. That year, they were playing a song they had just written called Break Free, which is also one of my favorite Dave Matthews Band songs. But that had a huge saxophone part. Leroy had a huge sax part in that song, but with his death and between albums, they didn't put that on Big Whiskey and the Gruger's King. So it's just always one of those kind of like fun little. I saw that song played live one of the first times, but it's never been released. It was on the Live at Fenway album from that year as well, from that same tour. But then just recently, their last album, it was a fun surprise to see that it made it on. So to hear that, Leroy's, I'm sure, was smiling hearing that when it was the finished product. So yeah, that's a great song. And another one, geez, you keep going. Great, Proudest Monkey's a great song. I've seen Dave live where he goes from Proudest Monkey into Satellite. Phenomenal. Chris, oh geez, we'll go back to that quick. Samurai Cop from Dave as well. That's one of his newer songs, which is great. If Only is another new recent Dave song, which is an awesome groovy bass song. So yeah, Dave Matthews Band. I've gone on along a lot. I've gone on long enough. Could go longer. But yeah, Chris, before we go into our top three, give a little recap on Zeppelin.
Yeah, yeah, Led Zeppelin. I'm sorry, my brain is completely frazzled now. Just when I'm dealing with this whole monitor situation, as I was trying to fix the monitor, then something else got unplugged when I was trying to plug the HDMI back in, and then, but yeah, Led Zeppelin. It's a mess. Led Zeppelin, yeah. Top 10 band of all time. Jimmy Page was a big inspiration that got me into wanting to play guitar, other than Slash from Guns N' Roses. It was, God, that's such a good pun. That was such a good joke. I have nothing else to say. Nope, that's it. Megan left it on the high note.
Who was their bass player, Chris?
I completely forgot.
And then yeah, it's funny you mentioned Dave Matthews. How many artists have been inspired? He inspired, and yeah, Dave is great. And going back to one of Guy's comments, and kind of echoes what I said. If you're a fan of music, I know it's very, open, but if you have the opportunity to see Dave Matthews live, it's like I said, it made me a fan. I don't think many bands could do that. With especially a lot of the newer music going on. So definitely a huge recommendation to see Dave Matthews live.
My mom saw him a bunch of times growing up with her friend Kim.
He's a good dude. He donates a lot to charity. He's a father of 2 daughters. He's named some of his songs. So I think I said Grace Is Gone, and is one of them named after his daughter. So it's just phenomenal. Type in if you've never listened to Dave, you're in for a treat. If you're looking for a new band to get into, exactly. So Chris, why don't you start us off with your number 3?
My number 3 is Green Day. Green Day got me into punk rock. I love them since high school. Sorry, I'm just refixing levels here now that I'm back in motion. I actually saw them a buttload of times. Once with Mike when they came out with Revolution Radio. And I just saw them for their anniversaries of American Idiot and Dookie at the Phillies field in Philadelphia. My best friend Brian. I love these guys. I love Billy Joe Armstrong's songwriting. And just listening to their evolution throughout the years has always been kind of like, you saw them go from these punk rock teens to family guys, like they write songs now about, besides Saviors was mostly about what's happening now. Especially on Revolution Radio, like they had a bunch of songs talking about the past and talking about their families. And their just songwriting has just matured. They don't do the fast paced stuff as much as they used to, because it's a lot harder to play songs like that when you get older. But the fact that Billy Joe Armstrong is still, he's pushing 50, over 50 now, and he's still jumping around like he's 20 is insane.
Same with Trey and Mike.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I saw when I saw them recently. Mike wasn't as moving around as Billy was. But like, man, Mike Dirnt's probably one of the best bass players of all time.
Playing the bass alone is moving around enough with.
And
that's his nickname, right? Dirnt.
Huh?
Just like I could be wrong, but like that's the sound of the bass when he plays.
Yeah, Dirnt.
I'm pretty sure that's how he got his nickname, Mike Turner. I could be wrong.
Hey, listen, man. I mean, they don't even remember half their career. I mean, like they were always shocked when Dookie came out the way that it did because they were high like 90% of the time working on that project. So the fact that they made a monumental record at that time was under that type of influence. Yeah, that's the whole thing, right? Like especially as of late, Billy has, of course they always call out the biggest of politics in the world. But like he always still spreads the message of just celebration, just be together, love one another. And like, sure, their songs are not the most family friendly, but they have become that family friendly band. It's at that point now where like their generation's kids are listening to them. And then now those kids are also have kids now because that's how old they are. And their kids are listening to Green Day. They've really become that they got to that point, right? Where they're just generational. But like Billy Joe Armstrong's playing, I could not tell you actually a majority of my songs when I was first starting out were just knockoff Green Day riffs. Like there was one whole song I had that was just what was it called? It was called Without You. And I just basically took a guitar riff of like, because he always did these like and like I took a lot of my all that palm muting stuff. Whatever. But like I took a lot of inspiration with guitar playing also from Billy Joe because I wanted to be in high school Green Day. And then
they are streaming live for Fire Aid benefit for the fires going on in LA.
Yep.
And I don't know which network or streaming service, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll be streaming. So I'm always a sucker for those concerts too. I mentioned the concert for 9/11 when I was talking about the Who, and you always get, unfortunately, fortunately, when you have these terrible things going on in the world, it creates events like this where you see very talented musicians, playing for a good cause, helping people affected by these, which is awesome. Oh, sweet. That is great to know. Releasing in theaters as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, you heard me go on and on about Green Day enough. So, going back to Dave Matthews Band, one of the bands that probably, inspired them. They've definitely inspired me and a whole bunch of other bands. The Grateful Dead. What a long, strange trip it's been.
Long, strange trip it's been. That's too low.
My introduction to the Grateful Dead, that starts with I guess, going back to what classic rock radio would play, Casey Jones was always played on the radio. Then as a kid, I'm like, what's cocaine? But anywho, other than that, my first big introduction to the Grateful Dead was not through anything, via song, album, band name. But when I went to get my first guitar, you're left to pick your first guitar strap. And I saw this cool blue's my favorite color, blue, and had these awesome looking fish on it. And Chris is going for a ride.
Oh shit, my camera fell. I'm so sorry, guys. Chris is not having a good day today, technically.
So I loved it. So I picked that, and I was like, yeah, it's a Jerry Garcia, a Jerryfish, one of his art designs. So I was like, who's Jerry Garcia? And that's the Grateful Dead. That song Casey Jones. Oh yeah, I know that song. And then probably not too many months after, we were in, there's a throwback, Strawberries, old record, shop, and it was a chain, and you could buy concert tickets there. And my dad goes to me, Mike, you must see the Dead, which is, Jerry sadly passed away in '95. But through the rest of the band, there's been so many different um, Grateful Dead bands still playing. And in 2004, you had The Dead, which was still their bass player, Phil Lesh, rhythm guitarist, songwriter, singer, Bob Weir, Mickey Hart, Bill Kreisman, two drummers, a band with two drummers. And how I got introduced to Warren Haynes, my all-time favorite guitar player, was through The Dead. He was pretty much the Jerry Garcia for that 2004 Wave That Flag tour. So that was a huge moment, that concert, for many reasons. That's how I really became a huge Grateful Dead fan. The very best of Grateful Dead album was played a ton, on my iPod video. And also leaving that show, somehow my dad and I ended up taking the wrong turn in Albuquerque and ended up leaving that show, and we're a whole nother section of the meadows of people selling tapestries, tie-dye shirts, and all that. So I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that show. They played a great set, and I heard a lot of songs for the first time, including two Jerry songs that he wrote, Bertha, Deal. You had songs like Eyes of the World, Box of Rain, Wharf Rat, a cover, Low Sparkle High Heel Boys. And that's just going to the show songs from that set. During the Grateful Dead, it's just American Beauties, their most well-known album, but also Terrapin Station, Live from the Mars Hotel, some of my personal favorite songs, Friend of the Devil, Uncle John's Band, Candyman, I can't think of it. Brown Eyed Women. Just going back to the band members. Phil Lesh, who sadly passed in 2004, very underrated bass player. He had a hand in writing a lot of their songs. He wrote Eyes of the World, Pride of Cucamonga, Unbroken Chain. My dad and I were very fortunate. This is another, story time with the Beast. He in 2000 and I think once again 2005, 2006, he wrote a biography, and he did a book signing tour, and he was in Madison, Connecticut at this little bookstore. My dad, took me out of I think baseball practice early, and we drove up. It was pouring rain. We're in layers, soaking wet. We waited outside, but I'll never forget when it came to meeting Phil. He stood up. My dad goes, "I saw you. I saw the Grateful Dead, and back with my dad saw the Grateful Dead with Jerry Garcia in Hartford in the 80s, and then he said, I got to take my son to see The Dead in 2004. And Phil stood up, shook my dad's hand, thanked him, shook my hand. He wasn't standing up for everyone. So that was a really, really cool moment. And just there's so much I love about the Grateful Dead. That's right. Sugaree was one of the songs they played as well. Another great Jerry song. But that moment meeting Phil Lesh was great, and I've got to see his solo band, Phil Lesh and Friends. And the cool thing about them was they always kind of had a new lead singer or someone helping out. Phil was a great songwriter, not a terrible singer, but not known for his vocals. So we saw him play with I forgot the guy's name, one of the brothers from the Black Crowes. We saw him with Joan Osborne, which was phenomenal. We came in late, because they had an intermission, and then they start off with I believe Casey Jones. I could be wrong. But so the Joan Osborne was great. We saw him. So Phil Lesh, phenomenal bass player. You also have Bob Weir, who I mentioned, probably the best rhythm guitarist of all time. Very overlooked. There's a great documentary on him on Netflix. Also, a songwriter, singer. Um, you have Bill Kreisman and Mickey Hart. Once again, two drummers. How many bands do that? And they make it work. It's phenomenal. They have kind of a cursed position when it comes to the pianos. You know, they had Pigpen, who was their original keyboardist. He passed away. Then you have Brent Midland, who was fit right in. He's the one right there with the beard right down there. Great natural raspy voice. He sadly passed away. And then they've had guys like Bruce Hornsby play for them, and but the Grateful Dead, like a lot of these bands in this list, I can go on and on. I know they're not for everyone. I know jam bands, sometimes have a negative connotation with them, but it's of Ripple, another great song by them. American Beauty. If you just want a great classic rock album, put on American Beauty. Yeah. Oh, yes. Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes. We saw him. He was one of the singers for them as well. But yeah, once again, I go on and on about the Grateful Dead. It's my number 3. Chris, do you have any thoughts on the Dead before we go into our top 2?
I think we should just head to the top 2.
You're okay?
I missed half that conversation. I apologize. Yeah, we're good now.
Alrighty. I'll go into number 2 because I think you lit off. Yeah. So
Rush. I knew that too. God. I know you so well sometimes, but like I don't at the same time.
So yeah, I think Rush was the 3rd concert I ever saw. That same summer I saw the Dead in 2004. They're doing those R30, I believe, their 30th anniversary tour. Once again, where do you start with Rush? You talk about musicians and the talent. You have Geddy Lee, bass player, keyboard, piano, keyboardist, vocalist, songwriter. You have Alex Lifeson, another very underrated guitarist, and Neil Peart, who is my favorite drummer. It's him and Carter. It's really tough, but Neil's, they're the Holy Triumvirate for a reason. And a lot of these bands that we've mentioned, you know them for X amount of certain members, but when they go on tour, they have touring musicians that you have your other guitarist or you have a percussionist. Rush has always been them 3. They've never toured with really anyone else on stage. It's always them. So if Geddy's playing bass and then playing keyboard, with pedals, you have Alex on guitar, Neil always, and his drum set, the iconic rotating drum set. You have their most iconic album are Moving Pictures. You have Flight by Night, another good one from them. Vapor Trails, another. One of my all-time favorite songs, Limelight. I'm blank, and I should have made notes.
Did you mention Tom Sawyer already?
What was that?
Did you mention Tom Sawyer?
Tom Sawyer. Yes, but one of the reasons why I Love You Man is one of my all-time favorite comedies is the inclusion of Rush. And then there's a fun YouTube video that's almost like when they went on tour when I Love You Man was on, they kind of had like a bonus scene where Paul Rudd and Jason Segel see them live, and there's a fun interaction with them again. So that's a great moment. Jesus Christ, Red Barchetta, Working Man, one of the first songs that really put them on the map. Free Will, Close to the Heart.
Closer to the heart.
Exactly. And then I do want to highlight this, going back to the Dead. Another great point, how they changed music. But yeah, Rush, sadly we lost Neil Peart a couple years ago, and it's definitely not toured since. these guys are just announced. Oh, this is fun. More breaking news. Rush 50 compilation album for their 50th. That's awesome. I'm just learning that for the first time right now. And I'm really bad on blanking on 2112. Great masterpiece of a song right there. Also great album cover. And then once again, I was fortunate. They were my third concert, and probably saw them 4 or 5 times after. And you talk about a loyal fan base too. But yeah, there'll never be another Rush. They were kind of the term prog rock. Comes from them. So I could gush about Rush more. Chris, before you go into your number 2, do you have any thoughts on Rush?
Rush, yeah. I tried really hard to get into Rush. I love a lot of their songs, but like I cannot sit down for hours to listen to them. Just because there's too much going on for my ears. Especially because like when it's because it's bad. It's bad memories because like when I first tried listening to Rush, I was really into like my late high school. So I was really into like my early, like that whole music theory is everything phase because I was learning music theory at the time. So when I was getting introduced to Rush, I kept thinking like, oh, this is a cool time signature. This is a cool change in rhythm that they're doing at this. Like I kept overthinking their music, which killed it for me. But like songs like Closer to the Heart and Limelight, like I could put those on and I enjoy every second of it. I will say my favorite moment of Rush as of now has been the surprise guest appearance at the 25th anniversary concert for South Park because they came and surprised Matt Stone and they played alongside with Primus and Ween and they played Closer to the Heart with Matt on drums.
If I could do a quick sub from that, and this makes sense. So during their tour, before they do, and this is on YouTube, it should still be, there's a skit of them trying to play Tom Sawyer. So this would lead into when they would play Tom Sawyer. I don't know if you've seen this, Chris, but it's a classic. Think South Park trying to in a band practice.
Yep.
Trying to cover Tom Sawyer. They take a quick pause in the middle. There's an interruption. Cartman, Stan, and Eric start arguing about it. It's great. So if you've never seen just Rush, Tom Sawyer, South Park, it's great. So I wanted to throw that little tag in there as well. Signals album is also great. That's where you get songs like Subdivision, New World Man, and so yeah, that's I love Rush. And I know you love your number 2, Chris.
I really do. Chris Carbona. I can never pronounce his last name. Cabrera. I think that's how you pronounce it. I mean, he is a Connecticut, a Connecticut guy. He's from New Haven.
I never knew that.
Yep, he's from New Haven. But what I love about this band is the fact that originally Dashboard was the band all of his buddies would come back to because a lot of his friends were playing in bigger bands at the time and getting famous. So he formed this band. So when they came back home, they would all play together, not realizing that what he was doing was going to be bigger. Because like when they would leave, he would still play like some bars and some nightclubs and stuff like that. And his music just skyrocketed out of nowhere. But I love his sound. I love his tone. I also really love his vocals, which I hopefully one day could aspire to reach. Because the first song I ever listened to was "Screaming Infidelities." It was probably their first biggest hit, they came out during COVID, a acoustic album which is right. I love this so much. I had to get it on vinyl. Um, All the Truth That I Can Tell. It was just an acoustic project, just kind of like their first two records. It kind of emulates more of the Brilliant. What's the album called? It's not The Brilliant Dance. The Brilliant Dance is on there. The Places You Have Come to Fear the Most album. It emulates a lot of that sound and a lot of that nature. But this is probably top tier of theirs, and really emphasizes a lot of their sound. There's actually a song on this record about Connecticut where he talked. Well, it's really like a quick snippet. It's on a song called "Southbound and Sinking." And
you played me this song, yes.
Yeah, and the first line is literally, "I'm southbound and sinking down on 95."
Yep.
But his tone, his quality, I fell in love to Dusks and Summers, that album that has the songs "Don't Wait" and their song they wrote for Spider-Man 2, "Vindicated."
That's my favorite song from them.
It's great. I think hands down, like the song "Hands Down" off a Mark, such a long title, is better than "Vindicated," just because I think it's more. I like the fast paced ones that they do, but "Vindicated," that's what got me like, oh, I want to sing like this guy. I want my voice to reach high like this guy. And he's been a lot of inspirations in a lot of my works as of late, especially off of my last record, "I'll Be Fine." Especially like the title track song "I'll Be Fine" was a lot like I really tried to get the same feel that he brings to his records. And there's so many songs I could think of that I say listen to. Like "Saints and Sailors" is probably my favorite. Like it's probably my actual favorite Dashboard Confessional song. On top of on this record, "Southbound and Sinking" is great. I also really enjoy "Sunshine State." Such a great song. If anything, if you want to listen to anything to get you into Dashboard Confessional, "All the Truth That I Can Tell" is a great starting point. Or you can listen to "The Places You Will Go," which was like their debut album, or "Dusks and Summers." Go nuts. Those are all my three options for Dashboard Confessionals.
So I actually did prepare a little intro to our number one. If you
nice
memory for a bit. I'm sure some of you who are tuning in at home are kind of connected the dots by now, knowing Chris, knowing I, a band we've talked about in depth on my channel. A huge band was a big part of our lives, still is a big part of our lives. A band we can look back at and just how influential it was on not only music but our lives. I hate to sound redundant. I hate that it's each of us each had the same number one, but it creates for something great to talk about. One of the most just influential bands of all time.
That's amazing. This was Marcus era.
Marcus era, 10 and counting. There he is. Look at him looking at you. So I had to throw this little quick. This isn't our true number one, but the band we've talked about that we've been in together, one of them at least, 10 and counting. That's me, clean shaven. That's Chris wearing sunglasses inside. My good friend Taylor, Marcus, who was in the band as well. He might be tuning into this video, so had to throw this in there. This was fun. This was truly. I was in and out of bands, from high school and college, and did a lot of solo stuff. This was like the first band that consistently I was doing shows with, and how Chris and I became such good friends. And music music learners, players. Learned a lot from Chris and being in this band. So I had to throw this in there, but our actual number one, the Beatles. I went on my little thing about our band. So Chris, if you want to start talking about the Beatles.
I mean, we talk about them enough. We've talked about them so much. Yeah, I mean, be real honest, the Beatles were my first introduction to real music. Not saying that, music is, and any music is good music, right? But like, you always get that one band that would hit you so hard. And as a musician, it's always that it's for me, it's just that one band that, like Guy Fawkes just said, like Nuff said, right? Like, these guys inspired millions. They've enlightened millions. Just they are the band that gets me out of my slumps. If I am sad, I will put on a Beatles record. If I just want to get through a day, I will put on a Beatles record. If I just want to put on a Beatles record, I will put on a Beatles record. I've learned a lot from their songwriting. I've learned a lot from their just structure in songs, and to get a better understanding of what a band could be. I mean, these guys did it for 10 years before they broke up, right? And they had their ups and downs, but like they still wrote music that were not just for the good of the people, but for them as well. So there's nothing I can never not say about these guys, that what they weren't doing was right and or wrong, but like what they were doing was right especially for the music world. Like they were the first to try a lot of things. They were the first to break a lot of boundaries. That's what inspired me the most. I remember growing up saying to myself that I want to be as big as the Beatles. I always had, always will. I'll never have. I know I throughout time I've grown to learn. Of course, I'll never be as good as them, but at least I could inspire myself to be, at least try to reach a level of musicianship and songwriting that I could feel like, this to me, this is good. This is good enough. And I hope people get the same love and feel that I got into writing my own projects just as much as they did.
Very well said. John Ringo, Paul George, talk about harmonies. I mentioned the Beach Boys earlier. They're right up there with harmonies. You have Simon Garfunkel, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, the Beatles harmonies. Between the four of them, once again, songwriting phenomenal, musicians phenomenal. Paul, give him Zuka the Lely phone, and I'm sure he'd learn it in 2 days. It's John and George, two of the greatest guitar players of all time in one band, which is crazy. People forget sometimes. Ringo, probably the most underrated drummer of all time. We've gushed over Ringo when we talked about we've talked about this band a lot. When we talked about the Get Back documentary, cool thing that Jackson did, and when we ranked their albums, Ringo doesn't get the appreciation as honestly. Neil, you have Neil Peart, for me, you have Carter from Dave, Stuart Copeland from the Police. There's a bunch of other great drummers, but for me personally, I think Ringo is probably in my top 5. I was fortunate to see him last year, 2024, him in the All-Star band, I got to see a Beatle finally, which is something I got to check off the list with my family. And he's touring again. He just put out Look Up, which is Ringo doing a country album, which is phenomenal. Definitely recommend checking that out. And I'll let Chris, after I say a couple, I'll let you name off some songs. We've talked about their albums, obviously, but Revolution, Strawberry Field, Penny Lane, I Am the Walrus, Blackbird, Love Me Do, Nowhere Man. Once again, you've heard us talk about them nonstop. Chris, what are some of your favorites?
Oh my God. Where do I even begin? I would say, as of late, my favorite Beatles song has been "A Long and Winding Road." Just because, especially where I'm at in my life, there's a lot of things going on with that. That song's been very reassuring and very um, it helps ease the demons a bit. But so like Long and Winding Road is definitely a favorite of mine as of right now. God, Benson, you're trying to make me list the whole
Let
thing.
It Be.
I mean,
Hey Jude.
anything off of Rubber Soul for me is always a great. That's my favorite album. Norwegian Wood has always been a favorite guitar song. Actually, probably one of the first acoustic guitar songs I learned on the guitar by myself with no help from teachers. And then Hey Jude always gets my spirits up. Though as of late, I have been skipping like the last like 2 minutes of the song because of the na 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 is like literally 4 minutes of the 7-minute song, which is fine. It's just it drags a bit at the end there lately, but God, Benson, there's so many.
Octopus's Garden is a great song. I'm sorry, it's one of my favorite works of George Arst.
That's a great song. No one will blame you for liking that song.
And one of my favorite parts of the Get Back film was
watching
Ringo
him
and George writing that song, and which is really cool. And it's despite their egos that kind of blew up at the end of them, it's looking back at how they were still able to make Let It Be and Abbey Road, two of the all-time greatest albums. Those might have been my 1-2. I'd have to look back, but and and Paul's still touring. He's been making appearances during Ringo's shows, so it's the movie isn't a biopic per se, but the Yesterday, I think we probably talked about on both of not both those last videos we did. I love that idea and concept, plus being a huge Beatles fan. And there's allegedly a Beatles universe. I don't know if those plans are still. There's going to be a movie about 4 movies about each of them before they.
Oh yes, you've mentioned that.
Still a thing, but it's the when it comes to songwriting, performing, harmonies, talent. Really tough to not pick the Beatles, especially for both of us. I didn't make an honorable mention slide. I mentioned that we could talk forever on our honorable mentions. But I will say my probably last 4 out would probably be Zeppelin, which made Chris's, The Police, Bruce Springsteen, and Neil Young. But then Government Mule, Chris, you thought I'd include that?
I was shocked. I was really shocked I didn't see them on there.
Warren Haynes is a huge influence on me as a guitarist, songwriter. What he's done playing with the Allman Brothers, probably another huge, big honorable mention for me. But that's just how tough this list is. And the funny thing about music, I think one of us said it when we did top albums of last year. It's kind of depends on your mood too. If we did this 3 months ago or 3 months from now, I'm curious to see what each list would be. I'm sure, obviously, there's ones that would definitely be in there without a question. But Chris, and I mentioned some. So do you have any bands that just didn't make the cut that you'd like to mention?
Oh boy. Because when I told you before when we started doing this video, like when I put my in my mindset of what bands I've been listening to in the last 10 years, and who I learned and grew from listening for myself. The list came fairly quickly. But like some honorable mentions, I don't there's I listen to so many people. Um, I probably at one point in my life would have said Wes Montgomery, because I love listening to some jazz guitar here and there. But I probably would have Blink 182, big one for me. But that's I don't have much.
Rolling Stones.
I there's never a big Stones fan.
That's
It's a little controversial.
that's a conversation for another video or off
That's
here.
fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So, thanks everyone for tuning in. Oh yeah, the band. How do I forget the band?
Oh, Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan.
I wouldn't say that I would say that my father was an influence on me growing up, but he was a very huge influence on me growing up, because I wouldn't be a musician if my dad wasn't playing music consistently in the house. And sure, it was Bob Dylan. But yeah, honorable mention for sure.
U2, I know they've, last 10, 15 years controversial in ways, but I love
Put an
U2.
album on my iTunes I didn't ask for.
Black Sabbath, Ozzy solo. I love AC/DC, Def Leppard, Journey. I was raised on classic rock, as were you, so a lot of those bands.
Bon Jovi,
Aerosmith, the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, going back to some older punk bands.
Letters to Cleo is a big one for me too. I don't know if you ever listened to any of their stuff. You give me a look like you never listened to Letters to Cleo. You never heard the song Here and Now? Just waking on a Sunday morning, I cook the tea in the morning.
Oh yeah,
yeah, dude, come on. I try to remember the words. I can't remember the words right now. Yeah, that's a great band right there. Nirvana. Okay, we're dragging.
Yeah.
Dragging.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. It's another long one. I didn't even say Chris. I hope to be done at this time. I've learned from that, but I do appreciate everyone. Guy, Megan, Chris, Pops, Phil, John Ross. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks whoever ends up watching on the rewind. Put your, please, if you haven't, subscribe, hit that notification bell, throw your favorite bands, your top 10 bands of all time in the comments. And once again, thanks everyone.
Thank you for dealing with the technical difficulties.
Rock and roll, everyone. Kiss.
Kiss.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Double click.